Hey guys, on this episode, we've got Jonathan Leafe. Jonathan is an agency founder. He's grown his agency successfully and sold it. And now he spends his time advising other agency owners and founders on how to do the same thing, how to grow successfully, how to scale, how to hire, how to win new business. He's just a fountain of knowledge to do with anything to do with sales, marketing, growth, and building a sustainable long-term business. So I'm super excited that he's agreed to be on the show. I've interviewed him once before, many years ago. It is way overdue. Jonathan, welcome back to the show.
Great to see you, Nathan. Yep, hope all is okay with you.
All good here. For our audience that don't know you, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, yeah, well, went to a very academic school, but unfortunately I wasn't very academic, so I actually left school when I was 16 and did a very few different jobs, including living abroad in Spain, but I ended up working for an advertising agency, pre-digital obviously, and that really excited me. I mean, and the reason I got into that sort of like design and promotion and advertising is that I was a professional musician for, as you can probably see from my Fender Stratocaster there, professional musician for about 3 years, and I still like to do that. And that really taught me about teamwork, promotion, all the things that you need to have to be a successful businessman, to be honest. I started my own business, a design business in 1989, again pre-digital, with a computer that I'd never switched on before, software that I'd never used before, and I taught all myself going through the gears. We built our first website in 1996. Really early adopters, trying to do that on dial-up. I tell you, that's difficult. A little story about that, if you've not heard it before, is that the first website we ever built, about a year later, the client rang me up and said, "Jonathan, none of us can find the website. Can you have a look?" Yeah, so yeah, okay, we'll have a look. And anyway, we looked at the logs. It hadn't been live for 6 months, and no one had noticed.
It's an
I mean,
indictment.
but I use that as an illustration just to show how rapidly our industry has changed, and that's why it's so brilliant. There's something changing all the time. There's always something disrupting, changing. So we went through all of the gears. We changed our business model many times. We had to just to move forward. And by the time I finished my journey in the agency, it was called Strawberry in East Yorkshire. There was were 40 in the team, one third in development, software, e-commerce particularly, one third creative, one third in marketing. And I was very proud, really, to hand it over to my management team. That was always the plan, and I got out with enough money, really, to financial freedom to do what I liked, and I absolutely love doing this job now. I've got 10 clients around the country, all different shapes and sizes, all with different requirements, and that's what keeps me out of trouble, really, Nathan.
How did you find that transition from being a musician to being a business owner? Very different skill
Well, they're
sets.
not different, because the thing about it is, in a band, there's five of us in the band. You rely on each other. You have to turn up. You have to show up. You have to do your job, and you have to rely on others doing their job as well. So there's no difference, and I think that's probably really put me in really good stead for the future, because I understand this. Because when people rely on me, I take that very seriously, and when I'm running a business, I take that very seriously, and I've got to turn up for everybody, the clients and the team, and I expect them to do the same for me. So pretty high standards, I would say, but that's not a problem if everything's fair. And also bands, of course, they live on innovation. You've got to keep reinventing yourself all the time. You've got to be able to perform at a moment's notice, even though you've practiced. But every concert, every outing is slightly different. We've had concerts in front of 5,000 people where we've gone, wow, that's just absolutely amazing. But you know what? We were terrible. We went down really well, and we played concerts to 100 people and played really well and gone down really badly. And you think, well, God, there's no rationale behind that, but you just have to turn up and do your job and be resilient. So all of those things that I learned in the band absolutely stood me in good stead for my future careers.
Let's unpack that a little bit more, because I do think, actually, having heard you say those transferable skills, I do think there's a lot there that the business owners can take from that. So having to perform at a moment's notice, having to be comfortable in the spotlight, having to, regardless of what's going on in your personal life or what's happening outside, you have to show up turn up and turn on really on stage.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
My whole proposition right now is that I think introverts are the best salespeople and the best entrepreneurs and the best founders on the planet for a number of reasons. We tend to go deep. We do a lot of research. We're very introspective. We like to put the other person first. We like to deflect praise and we like to put it on the other person and other team members. We like to listen a lot more than we speak, and a number of things. And I think a lot of these skills are very transferable to not only salespeople but business owners. I think a lot of agency founders, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this. I think a lot of agency founders are somewhere on that introvert spectrum. They maybe get into the agency world because they're very good at a technical thing, but actually transitioning from being good at that thing to then selling that thing, not only to clients but to their team members, to hire the right people, to get to sell a vision and get people bought into that vision. It's a very specific skill set that people think that either you have or you don't have. And it looks to me from the outside that you naturally had that from your ability to perform on stage in bands. But maybe that's not true. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really good point you make, because I'm having to think now. You're asking me really questions that I haven't probably thought about. But actually, definitely in the band, I would say there was probably 2 extroverts, which I was one, and 3 introverts. But with the introverts, of course, is their preparation level is unbelievable. Their attention to detail is unbelievable. Their resilience and their turning up is unbelievable. So actually, from a base where I was a guitarist, so you're expected to sort of like perform, be at the front, and I used to do all of that clowning around. But actually, from a solid perspective, the bass and the drums, if you do not have that set up well, if you think in agency terms, that's the operations. Then if you don't have that correct, then it just doesn't work. So you're absolutely right. Every good organization has to have a mixture of those sort of people. Now, you mentioned founders, and of course, absolutely. I think if you went out there and asked everybody to say, right, okay, an entrepreneur, a founder of a business, particular design agency or a software agency, something like that, they say, well, are they introverted or extroverted? And they would say, naturally, I bet 90% of them would say extroverted, but they'd be wrong. They'd be absolutely wrong, because I actually think probably the entrepreneurs that I know, I would say probably more like 75% are introverted. And the reason I say that is because they're very, very good at structuring their businesses and thinking deeply about the businesses. Where they often go wrong is they probably overthink it. They lack confidence. They have huge amount of imposter syndrome. Well, don't we all? But I think probably on the introverted side is because they're questioning everything and overthinking everything. Their imposter syndrome probably comes out a little bit more. But let's face it, it hasn't held them back. So they've managed to sort of like find workarounds and work with what they've got. That's all you can do, isn't it, Nathan?
How have you found? How did you find the transition yourself from founder-led sales? Sorry, I'm going to back up a little bit because there's so much there that I want to unpack. Okay. So you talked about confidence there and imposter syndrome. I mean, that's something that a lot of people battle with. I think whether you're introvert or extrovert, so probably introverts battle with that more than anyone else. How have you found the best founders in your experience have battled with that? Because at its heart, imposter syndrome is saying that I don't believe that I'm worth this number that I'm charging, or I don't believe I'm worth working with these types of clients or these types of people. I don't believe that I'm worth this. And that belief can become self-fulfilling.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be really overwhelming and self-fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly. So what I do with that, Nathan, of course, and actually this applies, as you quite rightly say, this applies to extroverts as well as introverts, but probably more with introverts. It takes time, does take time. You can't just like say, right, do this, and then goes in people's head. But I almost like get them to recant and say to themselves, I'm confident. I deserve to be in this room. I am good enough to be in this room. But the fact that I am in this room with a potential client or the client is I am doing them a favor by being here. It's almost like you have to keep on telling yourself these things over and over and over again. And guess what? After a period of time, you go into that room and you've got this natural aura of confidence, not arrogance. I'm not saying don't be arrogant about it ever, but you've got that natural aura of confidence. And of course, that's infectious. Clients buy into that. But if you go into a room and you sort of don't have that sort of like confident, I belong to here, belong to be here in this room with you, Mr. Client, then it's almost like clients can smell fear.
Mm.
So I think that's very important, but you have to work on it, whether you're an introvert or extrovert. Same applies, but probably more with introverts. They have to work harder on it because, as you say, I go into a room potentially with a client. One goes into a room with a client, and you're thinking, well, how can I possibly charge £1,500 a day for this? What are they going to say to me? You're almost like in your head starting to overthink it. I think the number one thing, absolutely, you've just got to believe that you deserve to be in that room with the client.
But you see, to me, belief comes from practice and knowing that you've done it before. And when you have a track record of delivery and having been in the room with these types of clients on a regular basis, or at least delivered a certain type of outcome on a regular basis, confidence comes from the fact that you can rely on past history and past examples in your head and go, actually, I'm very good at this because I've done this before. I deliver these results. I'm very good.
Guess what? We used to rehearse. We used to rehearse. We used to rehearse. We used to practice on our own, get together. We used to rehearse. By the time we got on that stage to perform, we knew what we were doing. Whether it would be new stuff or old favorites or whatever, then we knew what we were doing. There were times, I'm not kidding you. The first time I played at the House with Odeon, before going on stage, I was the most terrified I'd ever been. I just couldn't. I thought, well, I'm going to forget everything. I'm going to forget everything here. It's like going into a big corporate for the first time too. You think you're too small for them, and you want to upsell to this great big organization, but you're scared. Absolutely. But the training kicks in. All that rehearsal stuff. You know what? And once you get on that stage, and once everybody's there, and you plug your guitar in, and you think, well, do you know, I can do this. And actually, we perform really well. So, that's sort of how it goes. You just got to keep on practice and belief. It's a very, very important thing. And there are loads of things. There's NLP training. I'm sure you're aware of that, neuro linguistic programming training. That's very, very good if you do have sort of these doubts. But absolutely, it's practice makes perfect. Whether it be new products, whether it be old products, whether it be new clients, whether it be existing clients, you just got to prepare. Preparation is what makes the difference. And that gives you the confidence to be in that room saying, I deserve to be here. And guess what? I am going to give myself the best chance of a good outcome for me today.
The other thing that I think builds a lot of confidence is when you have a full pipeline. Because when you have lots of opportunities and you're not really worried
Clients
about,
can smell desperation.
they can.
Absolutely. But so you absolutely. And the thing about it is sticking to your price, explaining why it's the price, never discount. If you're going to discount, give away something for nothing, and then it has a perceived value. But if you give a discount, then that's your price. That's your new price, and you'll never get that back. Again, these are all sort of like little techniques that I've learned over the years. But it's just that, again, it comes with confidence. If the first thing that comes out of a client's mouth saying, is that the best price you can do? So, we can look at giving you a 10% discount. I mean, for God's sake, don't do it. Just say, right, okay, well, let's have a think about it. We could probably, scale back on certain things. These are the sort of things you've got to do. That's confidence with all those sort of things. And it comes through practice. I mean, sometimes we had, gosh, I'm not going to say her name, but she was the most brilliant salesperson, but she had no confidence whatsoever, and I think that actually gave her a little bit of authenticity and maybe a bit of fragility. And she used to smile a lot, and listen a lot, ask a lot of questions at the right time. So, she was using her mouth and her ears in the right proportion, 2-1. Sometimes I know I don't, but actually the more questions you ask, the more chance you are of actually getting to the right result, because this isn't going to come at any shock. clients don't really care about you. They care about what you can do for them. And that's what's important. And the more questions you ask, the more you will get to their pain points, and you will demonstrate what you can do to help them with their pain points.
What I've found is a really good way of justifying and just being very confident about my price is anchoring, and anchoring quite high actually. But because in many ways it goes for creative services as well as any other product. Very often clients don't really know how much it costs to buy what you're selling, because you're not selling something out of the box. It's not a cookie cutter thing. It's a creative solution to a creative problem. So in their mind, it could be the first time that they've even bought that thing. It's even the first time that they've had that problem. So in many ways, they don't even know how much this thing
It should
could
cost.
cost.
Yeah.
It should cost. So the first time that they're hearing it actually comes from you. So if that's the case, it's probably really good that the first time that you quote a figure, it should be really quite high,
Yeah.
because
I mean,
that
this
then anchors
again.
them.
Yeah, exactly. This is pure salescraft. I mean, again, you go into a BMW garage, and the most expensive car that you see is their top of the line, no one ever buys it model, and it costs £150,000. And then the car that you look at is cost £90,000. Oh, it
You're
sounds
like, oh,
it's
that's a
pretty good
bargain.
value. That exactly. You know, this is what really good brands have been doing forever. And of course, with agencies, absolutely you should do that. I mean, there's a good rationale to say that you should always offer three solutions. You know, the Rolls-Royce gold-plated diamond cookie cutter type offering, down to something which is very basic but will actually do the job. There's no point in suggesting anything that won't do the job, because that's a lose-lose scenario, isn't it, eventually? So you've got to be true to yourself. But you'd be surprised how many times clients actually take the top package.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the worst thing you can ever do in a sales call or anything like that, and so the client says to you, well, how much, what's it going to cost, Jonathan? I say, well, this is about £100,000. So yeah, okay, off you go. And you think, shit,
yeah.
we should
No,
have we should have,
we should have gone
it does
higher.
happen. Yeah, yeah, it does happen. But again, the longer you do it, the better you get at it, for sure. Again,
Definitely.
it comes back to what we've already been talking about: practice, practice, practice makes perfect, and be confident in that as well.
But as I said before, practice comes from having availability of options and having a full pipeline. So the question, Jonathan, is how do agencies fill that pipeline? What have been the best ways that you've found to keep leads coming in through the front door?
Okay, so I believe in the long term. So I was reading an article about Jeff Bezos, and he said something very, very profound. He said we talk about the current quarter and the current sales pipeline and what we think is going to happen. We all pat ourselves on the back, how good that was. Um, and he said very profoundly, he said the results of that quarter started 3 years ago. So, and that's absolutely my mantra, is that really, realistically, the sales that you're going to get next month are nothing to do with the work that you do today. It's the work you did years ago or months ago. So it's doing the right things to start off with. For me, it was networking. And whether you like it or not, I'm sorry, you just have to do it. It's been present of all those places, is making connections with the right people. A great example, one of the best clients I ever had, and I'm still friends with him to this day. It's just a wonderful man. He has built the most amazing business of 1 billion turnover now. When I met him, he had 6 branches, now got 135. He's in building supplies. It was about 3 or 4 years before we ended up working with him, and I had no expectation of working with him, but we just got on. We started to talk about things, and then one day, out of the blue, got the phone call: Jonathan, can you come and see us? We need your help. And then it became our biggest and most fun client to work on, to be honest. So you've got to be patient, and the work that you do now might not pay dividends for months or years to come. But if you don't do the work, then that future will not happen, if you see what I mean. So for me, filling the future pipeline for the next year starts today, and you've got to be innovative how you do it as well. So for me, for example, we knew that we had lulls in January and February, potentially over the summer holidays as well. So we used to go out and find clients that would fill those lulls. We were very sort of like strategic about finding our right fit clients all the time, just to sort of like suit us. because we knew if it suited us, it would suit them as well. So there's loads of different techniques around that. I mean, look, we could talk about this for the next 3 hours and still have another 3 hours to talk about it. There's no right or wrong way, but the more you do, funny this, isn't it? The more will happen.
Okay.
You've got to, it's just obvious. If you do nothing, nothing happens. But if you do something, things will happen. And whether it be your own database, absolutely should build your own database and have e-letters, newsletters, or even a printed newsletter, because that is a rarity. People will always look at that. You write a book, easier said than done. That's a long project. But you send people books around, they will never throw books away for the simple reason that it's against our being to
A
throw the
moral
written
code.
word
You're
around.
right. You're right.
Yeah, so that will hang around. It's the best business card you'll ever have. Yeah, but say be present. Turn up. It's what everything that we've said so far leads to this. Is said you have got to work at it all the time. And while I'm on that, you mentioned about founder-led sales. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's absolutely essential. The founder is involved at sales at every opportunity for the simple reason they know the business, they're passionate about the business, they're knowledgeable, they're authentic, they should be in it. I'm not saying they need to sort of like do all the follow-ups, but absolutely they should be there and present for at least 1 or 2 or 3 meetings, depending what it is. The weight of having a founder in the sales meeting is huge. I go back to the BMW dealership. You will be in there, and then the dealer principal, they know if you're ready to sell. They'll come in and say, "How are you doing? What do you think about it? It's really good to have you here." And you feel, "Wow, this is amazing." But if you're just dealing with a junior salesperson, you don't have the same feeling. So that's not what many people want to hear, but it's the truth.
So maybe not getting the founder involved in the pre-sales bit or in the lead generation or the outreach, but once the lead has been qualified and once it's an opportunity, then get the founder involved.
Exactly that.
And maybe
Exactly that.
not for the follow-up. Everything else after the follow-up, we can then hand it over to other people.
Yeah, I mean, for example, what I used to say with clients knew full well that I wasn't going to be working their accounts, but I said, "Look, here's my mobile, here's my direct email. If there's anything you ever want, get on with it." Of course they didn't, and if they did, of course I could get back to them and then pass it on to one of my colleagues. But that gave them the feeling that they were in control and they were dealing with the main man, even though I had 40 people in the team, and an equivalent of a 3 million turnover, I was still doing that. It wasn't very onerous to do, but very powerful. And I meant it, genuinely, I meant it. If there was an issue, I wanted to know about it. And if I could do anything to help the client overcome this issue, then I was there to do that.
And you know what? More than anything, it's probably just peace of mind. The fact that they have your number and they know that they can contact you at any time if anything goes wrong.
Exactly.
They probably won't, but it's just peace of mind. It's just reducing the risk.
On the rare occasion, there are certain clients that they get wedded to you and they start to
get
into your inbox and text you all the time. But
knock on your door.
They're few and far between. In all honesty, they do exist, but you can't build a set of rules around the edge cases like that.
Jonathan, you just said a word before you started talking about lead generation that would strike fear into the most of the introverted founders that I speak to, and that is networking.
Networking.
That is, going into a room of strangers and having to start and spark conversation. Small talk. It's the thing that I hear the most from most introverts that hate
Nathan?
Small talk.
Guess what, Nathan? Half the people in the room are in the same position.
So how do you do it?
So, well, look, it's never a problem for me because I'm sort of like quite comfortable with that. But so this is the one tip I would give everybody: never go with somebody, because if you go with someone, it's too easy not to speak to anybody.
Yeah,
it's amazing how many people say they go in twos and say, "Well, how was the networking event?" Well, we didn't really speak to anybody. Well, no, because they were speaking to each other. So you've almost got to push yourself out your comfort zone. It's almost like solo traveling. I know loads of people who go solo traveling, if they're extroverts or introverts, doesn't matter. But guess what? When they're solo traveling, they start meeting people.
Yeah, you have to.
But
you
if
have
they
no choice.
Yeah, because you've got no choice. So it's almost like it's the best tip ever. Never sort of like hunt in packs. Just go on your own. and find someone who's on there and just say, hi, how are you?
Couple more
And do you know
things.
what? And that sparks a conversation.
Couldn't agree more. So I can't let you go without expanding on what you said earlier. So you said there are certain times of the year where there were lulls. So January and February, early part of the year, you needed to bring in revenue. How did you do that? Talk to me about the specifics about
Okay,
what did
so
you actually
we
do?
found we found what skills or capacity we had in those lull areas, and then we used to chat around what type of clients might fill that, or from existing clients. As you know, Nathan, we've had conversations before, and you know I am the biggest farmer in chief. You know, I from a there's loads of people hunting, but I'm a farmer when it comes to business development. So you find opportunities you can take to either your existing clients or to other clients and say, look, we have got capacity in this time. And I'm talking about 10 months in advance here. So you design sort of like packages around those times and those clients and say, look, we've got opportunities that we could do something here. Why don't, when you're quiet, we're quiet, why don't we do a development project that we wouldn't be able to do any other time of the year? And so it's very strategic. You have to put a lot of thought into it, and you have to see you've got to match capacity with the right client, etc. But it's amazing how many opportunities arise from just being more proactive, and rather being the classic thing, rather than being an order taker, you have to be an order maker, and that's it. And sometimes these things would happen, say, months in advance. I knew that we were going to be mad. We did a lot of e-com, so we were mad rush up to Black Friday and Christmas, and then of course everybody goes in January. But that's the time to do a bit of conversion rate optimization, or to have a look at processes, or to upgrade the imagery, for example. All those sort of stuff that you don't do because you haven't got enough time. Another way of thinking about it is you go to your garage. If you've got a garage, if I had a garage, you go and open the garage and it's full of shit. So what you do, I haven't got enough time to do it now, so you close it. But actually, if you plan that and say, do you know what, I've got a window of opportunity, and it goes in the diary, and you open that garage and you take everything out, you chuck half of it away and put it back. That is what I'm saying. You plan the right moments to do all of those difficult, hard to do jobs that actually normally you just say, oh, you can't be getting around to those, and make it and do it to your advantage. And we used to run at pretty much full capacity because we were just smart with what we did with our sales.
Just before we end the show, Jonathan, I've had a couple of people recently ask me, hey, like, we're doing really well in the UK. We see a huge opportunity in the US. We want to expand over there, but we haven't got the first clue about how to do it. It's a massive market. They pay significantly more. It's just much more glamorous than Birmingham in many ways. What
But not
advice?
true. Can't be true.
Well, exactly. Well, not with the current Aston Villa success right now.
Oh,
Let
yeah,
me
okay,
let
I
me tell
know.
you
All
that
right.
right now.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
to fit that in there somewhere. um, but what advice would you give to a very successful small agency in the UK that's doing really well, that wants to expand and find new opportunities in the US?
Right. Well, I've never done it personally, but I've seen it done, and the way to do it successfully is really rather simple. You start small, and geographically you start really small. America is it's 50 disparate states, so you choose the state where you want to go, and you make a success of that one first. So whether it be New York or Wisconsin or Alabama, that's up to you. But you choose one place to go and work on that one before you go anywhere else, because otherwise it's just whoa, it's way too big. Whereas in England, I guess we're tighter, we're smaller. We've
Mm,
got 60 million population. America's
hmm
got 360 million.
hmm
It's got 50 states. We've got effectively a very small little country, and we can get
mm,
to one end to the other in
hmm
a few hours, where in America you can't.
You
So
can't.
you've just got to start geographically very, very, very small. And then once you've made the connections there, and you've got a foothold, then you can start to say, okay, and by that stage you'll have learned what's the next, and then you start rolling it out, and opportunities will arise from the activities that you're doing in one state to roll out into the next one. That's how it's done, and that can be quick, it can be slow, just depending on how much energy you put into it. But for example, I've got a client who's in the music business, so he goes to New York and Los Angeles. That's it. because that's where the music business is. So, you know, if you've got a specific niche and a specific specialism, and there's a concentration of clients in a particular area, then that's where you would go.
What
Simple as.
activities? Very simple. What activities do you recommend that they do when they're there? Is it networking? Is
Sorry to say, it's networking. You knew that was coming, didn't you? Hey, do you know what? They, despite whatever the Americans still, the US Americans still love the Brits, and they really cherish our creativity. It's very different to the Americans' creativity. We've got a very different. Whilst we share a language, the Americans are very different to us. That you'll learn that pretty quickly when you go over there. But and also they will see our prices as being low. That's number one, and
Right.
of course is that they are just tuned into paying more. They see the creative business and the digital business and marketing business as professional services, and you are on an equal tier as legal services. Whereas sometimes over here it's not the case. You know, some people look down their noses at the marketing industry, quite wrongly, in my opinion, but they do. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Really well said, Jonathan. I could speak to you about this all day. There's so much more that I want to get to that we haven't had time. Tell our audience, we're gonna have to get you back on the show. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Tell our audience where they can go to learn more about you.
Well, come and reach out on LinkedIn. Or get my book. I'm an agency. Get me out of here. Let me. I've got. So you can see it. There you go. That's what it looks like.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, so
absolutely love it.
And that's gone down pretty well, but that's available on Amazon if everyone's go and have a look.
Fantastic. We will put links in the show description. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Lovely. Great to see you, Nathan.